Previously, the group finished up their day of downtime with Tarya asking her mother to give her a new tattoo. The next day, Esther led them to the tower for a meeting with Isabella Mirkwood and several other key players in current events. Participants included Elder Gian, a representative of the West Wind Fleet, a member of House Idrin, and Illuminator Lindro, who had been mentioned in the newspaper quite a bit over the past few months. Isabella Mirkwood had a number of questions for Sean, and it quickly became apparent that there were plans afoot to potentially arrange for her father, Aurelius Valenta, to rise to greater heights. House Valenta had at least some claim to the throne, which was part of the reason that, historically speaking, they had such a strong rivalry with House Valoran. The group provided them with what information they knew about the Praetors, mentioning that they had an ally within them, which very much surprised most everyone. Around that point, arrows began to hail from the sky, two of which instantly killed Illuminator Lindro. Praetors began pouring from the swamp, and they were led by a gold cloak, who the group assumed was most likely Valtrexian. Sean tried to use Revivify on Illuminator Lindro, but the spell failed. Moments later, the gold-cloaked Praetor shot an arrow at the tower they were in that was tipped with an odd black crystal. Upon impact, the tower imploded. It collapsed in on itself, and for a long, terrifying moment, everyone was falling. The group and Amaxis, the representative of the West Wind Fleet, were the only survivors, and Amaxis was clearly dying. The only reason he was even conscious was because of stubbornness and a bit of healing from Tarya. Amaxis told Keelan to get to the docks. The group could escape the town with his fleet. Keelan handed him the fireball potion that he had and told him to use it well. Most of the group rushed down to the circle underneath the tower to see if Yara and Enola were there or if they were still in an echo plane. They weren't there, but there was still one more group of people left who needed transported. Esther told Tarya she had to transport them to safety, but there were too many people for her to take Tarya with her. Tarya was welcome to come, but someone else would have to be left behind if she did. Tarya told Esther to save everyone else. They'd find each other again. The group rushed towards the docks. The ships were all pulling away, but Talk cast Water Walk on everyone so that they could run across the water to get on one of them. In the distance, there was a distinct sign of a fireball going off, as Amaxis presumably used it to kill himself and a number of Praetors. As the group watched from the ship they'd made it onto, they saw the Praetors bringing a massive dark crystal, similar to the ones on the arrows, into the center of the town. Upon seeing the larger one, they recognized its resemblance to Sky Tears. And suddenly, just like that, the reference to Dark Tears in the letter Alonzo had given Keelan suddenly made horrifying sense. The Goldcloak Praetor aimed an arrow at the ship they were on, and Keelan had Saba jump in front of it so that it temporarily killed him but stopped the arrow. Then Tarya used her Cloud Rune as the second arrow was about to hit the ship, sending the arrow back to the dock and causing it to implode. That bought enough time for the group and many of the ship's crew to get off of the ship before the third arrow impacted, causing the ship to implode in on itself. The group ran on top of the water while the crew of that ship and others that were being sank swam towards surviving ships. Around that time, massive hulls rose from the water, ones that Sean recognized as belonging to House Blacktide, whose pretense of neutrality was apparently no longer in play. Behind them, the Praetors started to retreat. They clearly hadn't expected a second fleet. They left the crystal, though. The group kept running on top of the water to a dinghy floating ahead of them. Oz and Keelan began pulling it, as they suspected they needed it at some point, but the group kept running on the water as it was faster. They could tell that something was happening with the giant crystal back in the town. They felt a wrongness coming from it as they ran. One that reminded Talk, at least, of the Shadow Spawn. And then, just like that, Silt Shadow was gone. The crystal removed the town and a huge amount of land around it from existence. It literally imploded in on itself. Moments later, Shadow Spawn rose from the water everywhere. A large one that looked like a skull with tentacles appeared directly in front of the group, and they quickly fought it. In the aftermath of the fight, another Shadow Spawn rose nearby. One that looked like Tornak, although his dead but preserved body was still in the boat where Oz had tossed it. There was a wildness in his eyes as he asked, "Are you real?" And that is where we left off.